Welcome to Analysis in Chains with Nathan and Neal. Oh yeah, I forgot. This one was the one where we were supposed to just keep talking and because I cut out the voices. Hi, Neal.
Hey, Nathan. How's it going?
Good. New intro music. New way of getting adjusted.
Yeah, we're still trying to find ourselves here with all of these little gadgets in the podcast world.
It adds character.
Yeah.
So today, welcome to Analysis in Chains. We're what did I used to say?
Well, I wasn't profound anyway, so don't worry.
Wasn't profound. Anyway, welcome to us. You can go to analysisinchains.com and see all of our stuff. And we've got an info@analysisinchains.com email that you can write to us at. And today's subject, which is what, Neal?
It is Bitcoin Cash rising back from the dead. Wow, I am amazed. I think it was like a few weeks ago, I was saying it was going straight to zero. Again, how wrong was I? And it's kind of like, shot up a couple of $100, like US dollars, in the last week. It's crazy.
Well, it was up to 950 over the weekend, and I just checked now. It's down to 650.
Whoa. Yeah, even then.
It's a bit of a roller coaster.
It is. Even 650 is still crazy high, considering the fact that when it was launched, if you want to call it that, it was in the 400 mark and then it dropped down to 200. But I think Bitcoin Cash, jumping up and down is a symptom of what's really happening now in crypto world, and I think it's really down to a lot of uncertainty surrounding Bitcoin and what's coming up in November.
Oh, what's coming up in November?
Oh, so this is the talk of the town, Nathan. So what we're seeing is this whole SegWit2x agreement is potentially coming back to haunt Bitcoin. So what we're seeing now is that there was like this agreement of how Bitcoin should evolve. A lot of it was surrounding the fact that the size of the blocks would go from 1 megabyte to 2, I believe, and it was 8. I thought okay, to 8. So there was an agreement put in place, and now it looks like the developers are reneging on that agreement. And so SegWit2x is supposed to kick in November, and if there's no agreement, we could see another hard fork. In other words, we could see another coin come out of Bitcoin. So we could have Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Cash, and another Bitcoin. And so I think that's kind of like making the market jittery and has seen Bitcoin pull back, and some people are investing in other cryptocurrencies which are starting to really take off in the last week.
Seems like it would have an indirect effect, though, on Bitcoin Cash, because Bitcoin Cash wouldn't be directly affected by a second fork. It would, other than the fact that it would now have competition that's like just another Bitcoin network that's out to try and fill that role of being a decentralized currency, right?
Yeah. No, I think you make a good point. I think what we've seen with Bitcoin Cash is that when Bitcoin itself, I think, was getting closer to 5,000, it was impacting time, like how long it took to process a block. Its cost per transaction was going up, and then people started to warm up to Bitcoin Cash because its costs were so much more lower. It's like, okay, this just makes more sense as an alternative, because if it takes, let's see, the transaction cost is 24 cents, the average transaction cost for Bitcoin Cash, whereas Bitcoin is $4.60 per transaction. That's insane. So in this whole bigger picture that people where they want to see Bitcoin or cryptocurrency replace fiat, Bitcoin Cash just makes more sense because of its transaction costs. So I think now we're seeing this reaction where people are investing more in other cryptocurrencies that have better transaction costs or better. It takes much quicker to process. For example, if we look at Zcash transaction cost is minimal. If we look at Dash, it's only 15 cents. If you look at Litecoin, it's only 15 cents. And we've seen all of those cryptocurrencies jump up in the last 2 or 3 days because people are realizing, hey, their mechanics in terms of cost are a lot like Bitcoin Cash. Why are we not investing in those? So I think now people are starting to look at these other cryptocurrencies as potential rivals to Bitcoin.
I think one ideological difference that really came out of the hard fork, soft fork, whatever fork, the August 1st fork, was that the people that stayed really were starting to treat Bitcoin more as a settlement unit, it wasn't meant for buying your coffee. It was meant to settle larger amounts or that sort of thing. Whereas, having this increased block size turns it more into a currency, like a standard currency with much smaller transaction fees. So for those people that don't know, the reason that Bitcoin had such high transaction fees was because the number of transactions it could process was limited to what could fit in a block, and the block size was defined as 1 megabyte maximum. There's a bunch of reasons that it was done that way. From what I understand, I'm not an expert in this matter, but from what I understand, it was set at sort of an invisible 1 megabyte wall in order to prevent certain types of attacks on the network. But as a result, you could only process about 3 transactions a second because you had a block every 10 minutes, and each block had only a megabyte. And the way it divided up, I think it was like 4,000 transactions, something like that. So it's like 3 transactions per second. So when people wanted to do more than that, just the cost of transactions goes up because there's more demand than there is supply. So this idea of Bitcoin Cash sort of moving into that space of, okay, now we can solve this with our 8 megabyte limit. It almost seems to be going in 2 different directions now. You've got the Bitcoin Cash that's just going to be something completely different, and I think that could account for some of the increased speculation over it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, if we think of what you just spoke about, it's a lot of the technicalities of how the currency operates. And you didn't really talk much about the decentralization aspect of the currency, and I think that kind of highlights one main issue. Is that what I feel is that this is becoming less of an issue in terms of the how decentralized this currency is. It's all about the mechanics of the currency, how it works in different types of transactions. And I read an interesting article by TechCrunch the other day where this was highlighted, that with more people rushing into cryptocurrencies, they see it as a potential investment. They're using their money to invest in money. They don't see it as, I'm using my money to invest in a new revolution in how the world should work. And I think this conversation is going to be muted over time. Now, a lot of the Bitcoin people and holders, they're really, really married to this idea that there's part of a revolution. Whereas I think a lot of the new people coming in are thinking, which one of these currencies could be the future, like in terms of what we use, because the mechanics make sense. And I think that is the narrative we're going to be hearing a lot more in the future, because when we look at where the trade volume is, and the people who seem to be investing the most, again, is the Koreans, because these guys are really, really moving the market. But they really seem to be doing their analysis, and they really are very good at targeting potential currencies that are undervalued but have good potential to work as a replacement to fiat currency. And when we hear more of institutional investors coming into this space, I think that Bitcoin could be in for a bit of a shock, because these institutional investors don't care about this whole decentralized aspect of our currency. That what they care about is the potential for this to be used in the future. In 10 years' time, people will be talking about Monero, Zcash as a form of transacting for goods. So I think this is going to be the narrative we're going to be seeing evolving over time.
Well, that's a very good point, but not but, I suppose, and the community that really wants to change the world isn't going away, and I don't think I would expect them to. That's why we're having these forks in the community, where some people are saying, well, we're sort of, it's ideological. It's we're guarding the original vision. And the fact that it is decentralized means people take personal ownership in it. The people that are developing the blockchain system, and now for Bitcoin and for now Bitcoin Cash, there are centers, but it still largely is decentralized, especially now in the Bitcoin Cash system. So you'll get people with a deeper sense of ownership over the project. And the more people own the project, the more people feel that that this is theirs, the less likely they're going to give up their vision. It's not like in a corporate. It's hard enough in a corporation where you have a boss and you have monetary incentives, but when you have people who are like, well, this is the future, this fulfills something that I personally believe in, they tend to be a little more on fire for that thing.
Yeah, I actually think you just made an excellent point there. That's actually something we don't hear talked about much, is that the Bitcoin community is extremely strong. But then that strength in community could be its downfall, because they're really holding on to this vision. They really are invested in it. But all of these new people coming in that want a piece of the action, they don't see it that way. And so this could be a major risk, particularly when we see this consistent infighting, that we could see less decentralized currencies be more attractive because there's less risk of infighting, of any civil war. And I think, as a part of what we're doing as a podcast, we're going to be exploring all of these different currencies. I know we're going to be looking into Ripple later in the week and looking at how they're set up. I think they're a lot more centralized and decentralized. And so with all of these different models of supporting a currency, in terms of network infrastructure, I think they will start to play a part in terms of people's confidence in how this currency could still be here in 10 years' time instead of falling apart because of a potentially overcommitted community. So I think you just made a very, very strong argument, and I think I'm very, very curious to see how this unfolds over time, and how much it weighs on different currency prices.
One of the things that I noticed while researching this show and the previous show, and also the upcoming show on Friday on Ripple. Tune in, guys! Friday, August 25th, Ripple. Is that the different communities have very different feels to them. So, like we mentioned, Neo had a rather strong community with people mostly focused on it. We see the Bitcoin and the Bitcoin Cash communities are rather fiery and adamant about what they believe in, to the point where they can't really reconcile, and you end up having a fork.
Yeah, good point.
Whereas I'll let you know what my research uncovers for Ripple on Friday. But my first inquiry is that it feels very different. So we'll see. But it almost feels like, in a way, the closer people are ideologically, the more strongly they resist small differences. I think, and this is true in many situations, but I think even in the Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash community, they're very, very similar in their goals, in their ideals, in how they're doing things. But it's just in this little area of how we should go about it, and should it be a medium of exchange or a settlement token, or what should it be? Which seems quite small, but to someone on the inside feels enormous, because it's the core of why they got involved with this in the first place.
Yeah.
And oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, it's a lot like religion and nationalism in countries and stuff.
I didn't want to say that out loud, but that was sort of what I was thinking of. It did feel very similar. It's
Yeah.
deeply held beliefs. It is very similar,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and it's easy in a way. It's easier for someone to understand someone who's on the complete opposite side of the spectrum than someone who's very close.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's like, oh, you're in Bitcoin. Well, I guess I understand the person who's, doing a proof of stake algorithm more than I understand someone who's in Bitcoin Cash and wants to increase the size to 8 MB.
So, like every so often, we like to do a prediction. So, so Nathan, like, do you think there will be another Bitcoin coin or currency that will emerge in November, or do you think they will see it through?
If I had to guess, I would say another coin's going to emerge.
Wow, big prediction.
Well, here's the thing: is that even if the majority of people come together and say, "Okay, we're doing this, we're all together," all it takes is a couple other people that say, "No, we're not on board," and suddenly you have a whole new group. And the other big factor with this is, I think for the people that aren't as ideologically aligned, the people that are just investing and holding a bunch of Bitcoin, they might see it as, oh, look, I can double my money. I can get a whole bunch of new Bitcoin new whatever they're going to call it. It's sort of like with Bitcoin Cash. You wake up the next day, you got double your amount of coins, and one of them's worth 10% of the other. But it's like, you just got this pile of new money just sitting there. So I think that there is that incentive to create a new coin.
But then, then could we be looking at Bitcoin being some form of Ponzi scheme or whatever, that it's in the interest of Bitcoin to keep breaking away because people keep making free money? Because I think that's a big risk to Bitcoin, because then you really, people could be investing in it to get free money in the future, but also people could be offloading it because they've lost all faith in it. So it's
absolutely. And this is a whole other side chain topic here, but these sort of things happen when not everyone has access to the same information. All right. So when we've been talking about this, we're talking about the tight-knit communities that are developing, that are mining, that are investing their knowledge and are deeply involved with the ideology of this. But there are large groups of people that just have their money in there, and that they don't necessarily know they know they want Bitcoin, they know they want it to go up, and they know they're happy when they get a pile of Bitcoin Cash in their wallet, and now they can spend it or whatever. But the mechanics of how it works and why it's cool, maybe they only sort of understand that. And whenever you have that mismatch of knowledge, you do have these dangers. So what I would imagine is that you'll have this core of people who are deeply invested in both time and money and mentality, that are going to be trying to steer the community right. And then you're going to have people that also have power in the community, but maybe are looking out for short-term interests, or maybe, they end up sub-optimizing. They end up making decisions that may be bad in the long term, but pay a short-term reward.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. It's gonna.
What about you? What do you think?
I guess this is why we do this show, is because this world is so dynamic, it's so undefined, and it's like watching Game of Thrones. It's like you don't know what's going to happen in the next season. It's why we watch it, and it's what's so fascinating is that it's more than mechanics. It's about people as well, and their mindset and their beliefs. And so we'll see. I think we're still years away from really figuring out what these cryptocurrencies can become, because I think there's still so much to figure out in terms of what is the most suitable medium of exchange of these currencies, and then there's the risk, I guess, for these cryptocurrencies that fiat currencies could end up using blockchain themselves. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
We will see. I wanted to just, before we wrap up our show, because we're almost out of time, to mention a couple of things. First of all, on Friday, we're going to have a exciting show. We're going to look at Ripple. I've already gone to Reddit and started asking people for their input and feedback. And if you are interested in Ripple and then you want to tell us why, and write to info@analysisinchains.com, and hey, maybe we might talk about what you write on the show. Another thing I'd like to say is that we're still exploring what we can do with our Neal and Nathan nutshells here. They're our own crypto token that we've released. But what we do see it as is a way of rewarding you, our listeners, and having you participate and engage with us. And thank you for listening. So write us a comment, and you might be able, if we read it on the air, you can get some nutshells, and maybe they'll be worth something, or maybe not. We'll see. Doesn't matter. Did you have any news, Neal, before we wrap up?
No, I'm good to go. I think it's time to wrap up and drink some coffee.
All right. That's our show. Thanks for tuning in to Analysis in Chains with Nathan and Neal. Check us out at analysisinchains.com, on iTunes, Podbean, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Until next time, keep hashing.